Okay, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Accommodation Show. This week, I'm joined by Oliver Stern from Wheelhouse. Welcome to the show.
Hey, everybody. Hey, Bart.
How are you?
Doing very well. Happy to be at the Here to Stay conference.
That's right. We are at the Here to Stay conference 2024. Day one. We're roughly around about halfway through the day. A bunch of fantastic presentations so far, and the energy and the vibe is pretty interesting. This is your first conference over in Australia.
It is. We're excited to be approaching the market here.
Yeah. Tell me about that, because Wheelhouse hasn't really had any boots on the ground in terms of your approach. Maybe tell us a little bit about what Wheelhouse does, and then tell us about why you're in Australia.
Absolutely. So Wheelhouse is a dynamic pricing, revenue management, and data platform. We compete with Price Labs and Beyond mainly. Great choices if you're not with us. And basically, we focus on large portfolios. People who are very into revenue management. We're sort of a premium product with a technical approach. It's supposed to be very intuitive. And so when you're at scale or approaching scale, you definitely want to take a look at something like Wheelhouse. The reason we're here is because there's a lot of energy in the Australian and New Zealand markets in terms of like the maturity of the market in their tech adoption and operations. They're sort of in a renaissance moment right now. And so we're noticing that people are very excited to talk to us, and we needed to put some energy into the market.
I love it. On that note, actually, because you're based out of the US, I take it?
Between the US and the UK.
Yeah, gotcha. I just came back from Phoenix VRMA, and I'm going to put myself out on a limb here and say that we are in a bit of a renaissance in general in terms of our tech and in terms of the SaaS products that are coming out and where the industry actually does need to evolve. And I think that there are a lot of companies stepping up to the plate and really bringing new, innovative solutions. And I find it interesting that you said that Australia's in a bit of a renaissance. don't you think it's the same thing in the US?
Yeah, well, honestly, I think the US is a little further along the sort of tech adoption arc.
Yeah.
And technology in Australia, to me, and I'm hearing this from prospective clients, is a newer concept in terms of some of the transformative effects it can have on their business.
Yeah.
You know, dynamic pricing has been adopted here for a few years, but at the saturation point in the US is such that people are on their second or third dynamic pricing software by now.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, so a lot more kind of bringing in a lot more people that haven't seen the technology before. So it's that introduction to these different tools and technology. And I think that's actually one of those things. Strive, so my conference was actually an idea of we need to get you guys in front of an active audience, because it makes no sense for you to come all the way from the States or from the UK if there's not a room full of people to talk to. But then people that are local, it's a lot easier to come to a local conference and then talk to the suppliers and assess these partners that you can actually work with. And I don't know if you know, but we're going to New Zealand next year, and it's exactly the same thing. We're actually, it's the first conference that they're ever going to have, and we're just desperate for it to be successful, because then we can start to help, bring the industry forward and bring that technology forward. So it's great that you've come. Welcome to Australia.
Thank you so much.
Have you been to Australia before?
No, this is the very, very first time.
And how many days have you been here?
2 days so far.
And how's the jet lag?
Remarkable.
All right. Look, I want some top tips from you. You've come all the way over here. It would be remiss of me not to pick your brain and get some ideas for people, for maybe tips that you've learned throughout 2024 or things that they can apply into 2025.
Brilliant. Absolutely. So I would say this. We have had pretty explosive years in our industry. Supply growth has been remarkable, and we're facing a few different layers of contraction right now. One is regulation. Everybody is facing the risk of oversupply, and that's the second. And they're actually interrelated, where a lot of the times there's so many available rentals in the market. Local councils are getting reactive and perhaps putting policies in place that can be quite restrictive. Some might say that's the 180-day limit in Sydney as one example. And so with property management companies, and I used to be a property manager, honestly, it's about having the staying power to ride all of these waves. You're going to have good times again. And so there's a few things. Still adopting tech, but adopting it truly. If you think about all the features on your computer that you don't know about and don't use, and maybe that's fine because you're just an everyday consumer, but as a property manager, there's software that you might buy on the promise of something, but if you don't actually implement that and let it transform your business, it's very difficult to do. But some software companies support that better than others. Some teams just have a strategic priority where while they're facing a lean year, they're not going to grow externally as much. Maybe they're going to grow internally, improve your processes, train your team, switch a software. So I would just say this is a time to really consolidate and make sure you can get through years that are at least flat. The data is flat year over year right now in terms of the revenue. revenue, but really it's about staying power. And so figuring out the internal changes that you need to make so that by the time we enter another boom period, you're really ready to launch and grow again.
I love it. I love grabbing people's minds and attention at these kind of events to think about these things. One of the things that was interesting, and this might be a bit controversial, so apparently attendee numbers were down at VRMA, but yet there was a huge amount of opportunity. There was still thousands of people in the room that you could still go and approach. But the way you do your business changes. I feel that it's kind of also that inflection point that we had during COVID, where people would stop and kind of figure out what they need to do next within their business to sort of make sure that they can survive COVID, because there was so much unknown. The difference here is I don't think there is as much unknown. The regulations might come and like really shut things down, but that's sort of like that's a cliff that if we jump off of it, then it's everyone's kind of like in trouble at that stage. But building that resilience for changing tourism behavior, changing regulation, and building that solid base is very important and can prepare you for whatever that future is. So I really like that insight. I think that's incredibly valuable.
Absolutely. Yeah. You know, what I've seen is I agree there's less jeopardy with the sort of uncertainties that we're facing now, but it's still a good reminder. And honestly, this is just part of life, is you go through a contraction period and you figure out how to get really efficient. I would say another tip I have, because I'm in dynamic pricing and revenue management, is when you have a pricing tool, whatever it is, you can turn it on and you've got an algorithm setting your rates. And during some of the pre-COVID years when the market was less mature, and post-COVID when demand was so high you could put any price out there and it would get booked. Now it's about managing revenue in the future. So if you think about the 0 to 60 day range, the 60 to 6 month range, and the 6 month to a year range, you need to have your rates in the right position for each to build up a book of occupancy so that by the time you're in the last minute, you're only sort of adding cream to the top. And the people who are doing the best year over year, no matter what the markets are doing, had that expertise to look ahead and know they needed to do more to stimulate consumers to book.
Ahead of time. And that's something that I've heard very recently as well, is that there was kind of like this, the dynamic pricing training was, well, if it's 6 months out or 12 months out, then bump up the price as much as you can. And then as the window gets narrower, then you're going to reduce the price until someone actually books. But now it's actually being a little bit smarter with that strategy and not just using that one sort of variable, is actually understanding your pacing, I guess, a little bit better, so that then you can make decisions so that you make sure that you actually do get those bookings if people are looking 6 months out, right?
Exactly. That's exactly right. Which is to say, maybe don't pump your rates up as high, but bring them down until you start to see a few bookings pick up. Look at those rates. And if you compare those rates that you're booking 9 months ahead of time to your last minute rates, often, even though you're bringing your far future pricing down, it's not as low as when you were slashing prices in the last minute to try to fill your occupancy. I think that's the trade-off. And it just comes with a little bit of testing. Everybody has constraints in their portfolio, owners who have certain expectations about rates, but it all just comes down to, again, priming your company to move forward with more freedom and effectiveness in the future, which includes owner communication or letting some properties go. There's all sorts of things you can do to free yourself up, because sometimes making those painful choices in the short term leads to a lot of gains down the road.
Amazing. Okay, cool. We've had 2 fantastic tips. We went from solidifying your business, your tech stack, to pricing, which is great. And I'm sure we could do this all day long, but this is a mini episode of the Accommodation show. So if you have enjoyed the content, make sure that you like and you subscribe. Make sure that you get in touch with Wheelhouse if you've got any questions, concerns, anything about pricing, wheelhouse.com.
Wheelhouse.com, Oliver Stern on LinkedIn, and really show up to these conferences, you guys. I was a housekeeper when I started in this industry, and my first Vacation Rental Management Association conference blew my mind. I fell in love with the industry, and it will inspire your team to come to one of these things, not to mention teach you a lot.
There you go. So you've got Here to Stay 2025 in October next year, and Strive to Thrive in New Zealand in March 2025, and there's lots all over the world. If you want a list actually of all the different events, then get in touch with me and I will give them to you. Take care. Have a good day.
Thanks, Bart. Cheers.